Good evening. Good evening. And welcome to another episode of the Ready Set Talk Show. Tonight, we are going to have a great discussion about back to school and some issues children may face while going back to school. And I think it's important to discuss these major topics that happen all of the time and give parents some ideas, give students some ideas, some encouragement, some tools that they can use, and hopefully, even if we can't alleviate or mitigate the things, we can at least put a damper in and minimize the impact it may have on children. So tonight, I'm excited about my guest. I have Ms. Danielle Jefferson, who is a professional school counselor with Groves High School. I have Dr. Janice Munn, who is also a professional school counselor with, where are you, Dr. Munn?
Windsor Forest High.
Forest High School. Then I have Dr. Peter Thompson, who is a retired social worker from the Chatham County School System, but she now works with the Mediation Center in helping teens develop conflict resolution skills. And so the perfect people to talk about the topics that your children may be facing on a daily basis in the school system. Welcome, ladies, and thank you so much for participating in this tonight with me. So I want to talk about, we're back to school. It's early in the school year, so I think we're catching this at a time where we can put some information out there. We can put some things out there early on for people to grab and to begin using, whether there's a student or parent or even a professional in the school. Sometimes in the school, the teachers may need some tools or things to identify ways of resolving issues. One of the main things that we see in school is, I'm going to start with the topic bullying. And to think about bullying, I don't think bullying is a new thing. I don't think bullying just started happening. I think bullying has been happening for years. The difference is that when we were in school and we were bullied, our bullies stopped at the end of the day. When you got on the school bus and got off at home, pretty much, unless it was a neighborhood fight, your bullying was over. Now bullying is 24 hours a day, and it's causing stress on children who are not as inclined to defend themselves or have tools to defend themselves in these situations. What do you ladies say about bullying in school, and what you can do? What can you say to help students or parents or teachers to intervene or to recognize students who are being bullied, who may not say anything, just being in that environment? What can you tell us tonight about bullying that's going to help our students? We'll start with Ms. Jefferson.
You said you started with me?
Yes.
It's about education. We need to educate kids about what is right and what is wrong. And it really starts at home, because we all are different. We all are brought up differently. Not bad, but just different. And so we need to educate kids that everybody will be different and there's nothing to talk about, in a negative way. What I did, because this is my first year at Groves at a high school, I did K through 8, and we always had sessions and we talked about it and we put it out there on the table so kids can understand. Because that was one of my major pet peeves, is bullying, because you never know a child's story. Mm-hmm. You could see them physically, but you never know a child's story or a person's story. So you don't know if the parent may or may not have spent their last $20 on food, and shoes and clothes was not an option at that moment. So I always tell the students, think about, you don't know their story, so therefore don't speak of them in a negative way.
Have you had any situations where you encountered a student being bullied, and you had to intervene or offer some assistance to that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. And I think, I've had several issues, again, just started this year, but several issues last year, to the point where we had kids that, never didn't want to be here anymore. And that's it, as a mother myself, that's sad. But within conversations and mediation, believe it or not, when they sit and they have conversations together, they start to understand each other's difference. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just an awareness and letting the parents know. We need to educate the parents on bullying so they can educate their children on what to do and not to do. And then it will become an easier cycle for bullying to eventually, hopefully, go away.
Mm-hmm.
If I might add, you mentioned, Ms. Jefferson, that mediation can be helpful. And one of the things that we do is we teach peer mediation in the schools so that we teach youth how to mediate conflict between their peers. Because if they can come together and talk, like you said, not only talk, but listen to one another, hear each other's narratives, each other's stories, then you'll find out that you have a lot more in common than you have difference. And another thing that I think that is important for adults and teachers is to be observant.
Yes.
I think we got a little feedback there. I apologize for that. Hopefully that'll resolve itself. So, statistically statistics says, and one of the resources that you can use is stopbullying.org. But about 20% of students between middle school and high school nationwide experience bullying. All of it is not reported. I think that statistics may be a little higher. That's on what's reported or what's caught, or what information is out there. So when you look at that amount of students being bullied, and I think most bullies are physically stronger or larger than their opponent. So there's that intimidation factor when they see a person. Dr. Thompson, you talk about peer mediation at the Mediation Center. How do you mediate that fact when you have, a smaller child and a larger child, and that bullying is happening and you're bringing them together to, I like the idea that you have students talk to each other, because sometimes the bully is experiencing something that they're taking out on the weaker child. And so sometimes that conversation can bridge the gap, because conversation brings understanding.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with those physical issues? Those are the emotional issues. How do you deal with kind of minimizing that fear that happens with, this person is physically stronger and bigger than me. We can talk all day, but I'm still going to be afraid of them.
Well, to be honest with you, when it comes to peer mediation, we don't recommend that the youth mediate bullying situations because of the power differentiation that's there. The person may be bigger, they may have, maybe stronger, they may have, be more popular. So there's that power differentiation. And so what we suggest is that the adults handle those situations. However, the students may begin mediating a situation, and then they find out in the course of the mediation that it's a bullying situation. And the way they determine that is that we teach them the definition of bullying. Some people might say that they're being bullied, but it's an incident that only happened one time.
Okay.
She called me out of my name. She's bullying me. But we teach them that, I know from the school system's perspective, that definition includes a repeated or potential for a repeated act. And so if they have individuals who are repeatedly doing things to them, offending them, teasing them, then that's bullying. And my mediators understand that at that point, they can call off the mediation, and then they need to notify the adults that are there that this is a potential bullying situation. And so we would need an adult to handle that.
So who are the adults to mediate? Are they parents and teachers, or who are the adults?
Who are the adults in this situation?
Yes.
We have coordinators at each school who coordinate the program, and they are usually professional counselors. We have a few teachers, but the majority of them are professional counselors.
Yeah, exactly. If I could piggyback on what Dr. Thompson is saying, that we've done it in our school. And I know that they do it throughout all schools, elementary, middle, and high, the peer mediation with the students. But one thing I would like to go back to what Ms. Jefferson talked about was the piece about parenting. We really got to assist our parents in understanding what bullying is and to listen to their children, because, your child can come home and say, oh, I'm being bullied and this is happening. And like you said, back in the day when we were in school, we probably didn't see it as bullying. And they have so many different avenues that they can bully now. You know, you got the cell phones, they have all social media. So we really need for our parents to listen to their children. If your child comes home and said, this is what's happening, you know, to really think about that and talk to your child about that and help them understand that that could be a facet of bullying, you know, and also to follow up with that. You know, if you're telling your child to report that to an administrator, parents should also report that to the administrator. Don't take anything for granted. Nothing.
Absolutely. What do you say to students who feel like they're being bullied and they say, well, I can't go home and talk to anyone? Are they allowed to go to the school counselor? What are the avenues they are allowed to take when they want to be proactive and say, you know, let me report this, let me tell someone? Because sometimes students or children don't report things because who do I go to? Where's the safe space? What door is open for me to even walk through to present my problem and be heard?
I like to say something. I always say I have this magical skill, and I tell the kids that what you say in here stays in here. And I have a way, if you tell me you're being bullied, I have a way to not bring your name up. And I say, I found out from a teacher, or I found out from, you know, the custodian. I never try to put that kid in a position where they might feel that they're retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I give them a safe spot. Be like, if you entrust in me to investigate this, your name won't be brought up to say, you know, Tommy said that you're bullying him. I would never say that like that. So I try to give them a trusting environment so that I can investigate the bullying and keep them safe, so that I can eliminate the bullying. Because I think that's the biggest thing with kids. They don't want to tell because, you know, the famous word snitching, and then the retaliation of, you know, saying it. And then the children that are being bullied, once we define what that is, it is frustrating. I know it can be annoying for someone to continuously say something negative or do something negative, but they rather it continue to happen than to speak and then find out they are the snitch.
Right. So. Right. And sometimes, you know, the topic that we don't talk about a lot, sometimes that bullying, when it's unaddressed, leads to suicide. And so that child feels like they have no other way out. It's just easier if I'm not here, then I don't have to deal with it. And so we definitely don't want that for our students. And if you are a student who's watching this, I want you to be bold enough to tell someone, talk to your school counselor who can keep it in confidence, or, you know, go on safe spaces like stopbullying.org or suicideprevention.org, so that you can tell someone, don't suffer in silence. It's the same thing we tell domestic violence victims. Don't suffer in silence. Tell someone, because there are resources that are available for you. And so early on, I talked about bullying, and I talked about the bully and how the bully could be dealing with issues themselves. And one of the issues I believe, and having worked with children in my profession, one of the issues with bullies is self-confidence. They have low self-esteem. And so rather than getting help for that or dealing with that issue or learning how to build that confidence, they hide that behind the behavior of bullying. What do you say to students? What is something parents can do to help begin to build their children's self-esteem? I think the building of self-esteem for a child to survive in the school environment starts at home. You talked about that with the bullying. Same with this. I think it starts at home. And what do you put in your child in the morning before they leave for school to go into an environment that they can't control all of the factors that happen around them, but what's in them to help them deal with it? What do you say to parents about starting to build that self-esteem and that self-confidence in their children, so when they encounter the school environment, they're encountering other people, their low self-esteem, a lack of self-confidence won't lead to disruptive or aggressive behaviors?
I might just jump in here. I think that parents have to start at a very early age, instilling that confidence in their children when they're very little, because I know as a parent myself, you can tell who your quiet child is compared to your child that's going to be robust and in somebody's face. And so you have to give a little bit more time to that individual child who's more quiet. Give them that space to be able to feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you and saying whatever they need to say to you without any kind of repercussions or without feeling that they said the wrong thing. And if we can start that at home with the parents, and they feel confident enough to go to their parents at home and talk to them, then they'll let the parents know when something is going on. And the parent, I always tell my students, your parent is your main advocate, or should be your main advocate. And so when you go to that parent and you tell that parent what's going on, your parent needs to go to bat for you. And I tell my parents that if you have to, part the Red Sea to get something done for your child in those cases, then you have to do that. Don't stop, because we see so many cases now of children who are dying by suicide because they're emotionally unable to handle the bullying that's going on. And they don't feel that they can go to their parents and talk to them, or go to those at the school and talk to them.
Right. And I think the theme of what I heard you say is that children need an advocate. And they need to know that they have an advocate who is consistent and who is strong enough to fight through the tough times for them. Because if they can't fight through the tough times, and their advocate can't fight through the tough times, then what's there for me? Then there's the hopelessness. There's the, nothing is working for me, back to our, problem, which is the suicide. So it's important to build that confidence on a daily basis. And Dr. Thompson said something that I tell my parents when I'm working with children is, especially sometimes you have a parent who has multiple children. And so your schedules are a little tighter. You have to do a little more, but it's important for you to recognize the personality of each one of your children. One child may be, they go to school. You may have that child who goes to school, no problems. They make good grades. And so you feel like, well, if this child can do it, if child A can do it, then child B and C should be able to do it as well. Well, that may not be the personality for child B and C. So you have to make sure that you are allowing children to be themselves. Sometimes the struggle with the self-confidence is I'm not allowed to be myself. I have to pretend to be, or try to force myself to perform when I'm struggling. I want to say I'm having a problem in this class. I want to say I'm having a problem adjusting, but I can't because child A is doing it. So mom expects me to do it as well. What advice do you guys have for parents who have multiple children, in addition to, putting the thing in them, but dealing with multiple children and building that self-confidence in their children?
Well, I can say this. One thing that I use in raising my own children is, like you're saying, like remembering that your children are different. Just because one child can do something to perfection does not mean the other one can. But to help build the self-esteem, what I often did was tailored whatever objective I had for each one of them, and kind of lowered the expectation a little bit to make sure that they excelled in it, and then once they got that idea, yes, I accomplished it, yes, I can do it, that's building that self-esteem. Then you push it out a little further and see if they, yes, I can do it, I did it. Sometimes we want our children to reach leaps and bounds, and be perfect, but we just need to set those boundaries and just help them build that self-esteem a little bit at a time. And then we as parents also have to be role models, for our children as well. They need to see us doing those same things.
I think what I heard Dr. Thompson, Dr. Munn, the way you were explaining it is like, set the standards for where the child is. When the child accomplished that, then move the standard out a little bit. When they accomplish that, move the standard out a little bit, because what is happening is as they accomplish that thing, that confidence is built. So now they want to do more. Whereas if you set the standard out here, I heard a statement, and I'm probably going to mess it up a little bit, but you can't put a fish on land and expect it to swim. That's just not possible. And sometimes that's what we do with our children, and we don't give them that space, that water that they need to survive, and build the self-confidence. And that leads me to mental readiness. what does that mean to you guys for students to be or have mental readiness for the school day?
That should start at the house before you leave home. The goal of mental readiness is to make sure that the child, the student, is mentally prepared to accomplish and receive everything that he or she is going to receive for the day, the challenges of the day. So when your child wakes up in the morning, good morning, the I love you, all of that matters, because this is a tough world. We know that. And imagine being in school right now during these times. So that's what we want to do. Make sure that the student is mentally prepared for the accomplishments of the day. And I know Dr. Thompson can preach to this as a social worker, because I know that was their goal, making sure that every child was mentally fit, in school and mentally fit for the day. So that's what I see it as, mental readiness.
Okay.
And I think too, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this as delicately as I can. We have to allow our children to fail sometimes. They're not perfect. If we allow them to fail sometimes, and then they come back from that, then they got that experience to where they can go out and they can do something else. And so it builds that, like Dr. Mom was saying, it builds that confidence, but it makes them mentally tough too. Because when you're talking, I'm thinking about my growing up, and I grew up in the projects. And so you had to be tough. And in the beginning, I was not that. And I can remember coming home crying to my mom that this girl did this or this girl did that. And, back in the day, some parents, they especially when you came from the ghetto, my mom would say, child, they talked about Jesus Christ and you ain't perfect. So they're going to talk about you. So what you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. In other words, she said, you got to suck it up. And so I didn't get any sympathy. So I had to suck it up. But now today, that might make a child not want to come home and tell your mom. So we have to be careful with that. Children of today are not quite as resilient as years ago when I'm up in age. So years ago when I was out there, when you had to be resilient, because you had to come home to an empty house when nobody was there. Your mom was working, our dad was working, and you had to stay in the house, and you had to fix dinner for your siblings. You had to make sure your siblings got what they needed. You had to make sure homework was done before your mama got home and everybody was ready for bed. So it was a lot of responsibility. And nowadays, a lot of kids don't have that. So the mental toughness may be a little lacking in some instances.
Okay. Mental toughness, that ability to manage difficult situations, but still survive in the middle of it. Maybe there's a teacher who's watching this, or another counselor who might be watching, who may, the idea is that, and I agree with all of what you guys saying, is that a lot of this stuff begins at home with the parents. But the unfortunate part is not every child has that parent or those parents who can prepare them for that day. So teachers have they already have a lot to do with little pay. I totally agree with that. But what ideas would you give teachers who may have that child that may need, and it doesn't have to be something they pick one child out. It could be something they do, with the class in the morning. What's an idea of something a teacher can do to say, maybe I can catch that one student who needs a little push to be mentally ready before I start presenting, before I start teaching? What's an idea of something a teacher can do?
I can tell you what I used to do. When I was at the KA school, I stood for one of my duties, I stood in a local, everybody had to pass me. So what I did, because it was a lot of kids, some kids' names I did not know, some I didn't. But what I always did was give an encouraging word to every student that passed me every day. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point where it was like, good morning, handsome. I love your shoes. I always gave him compliments.
Mhm.
I started wearing sneakers like the kids so that we could start a conversation.
Mhm.
But I suggest giving that positive affirmation in the morning. It doesn't have to be a long drawn out. It could be, hey, handsome, good morning, beautiful. I love your bow. Just something so it's their own to make them feel good about themselves during the day. Because again, like you said, they may or may not get that at home. So why not give it to them then?
Mhm.
You know, because I saw a video years ago where a kid gets on the bus and the bus driver kind of shuns him, gets to goes to everybody shuns him, and he just sitting in and had a lousy day.
Mhm.
Imagine if the bus driver would have said, good morning, have a great day.
Mhm.
That starts the kid off to have a positive day.
Mhm.
So just by me being in my same location where every kid had to pass me, I would try to say hi to everyone
Mhm.
and give them a little positive. You look good today. I
Mhm.
like those pants. I like the way you wearing that bow.
Mhm.
Just to say, you know what? I wasn't sure about my outfit, but Miss Jefferson said I look good, so I
Mhm.
look good. And then that, having them go on about their day. And I think teachers, and some of them do, just give them positive word because you don't know, again, what their story was to get there. And that's
Absolutely.
probably the safest place they can have for 8 hours.
Mhm.
Make that the best 8 hours that they can have because when they go home, we don't know what they go home to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mrs. Jefferson, I agree with you because, and I believe this as well. When you pour that positive affirmation into that child, you make your day easier because now you don't have to fight with that child to focus or, to join in. You start to build a little something in them that makes them want to be there. I remember, and even in, that's one of the things, even in therapy, when you're working with children, that's one, I don't begin talking with children about the issue that their parents bring them for. I want to talk about, what happened in school today, or I want to talk about what's the latest language, what terms are you using, what songs are you listening to, things that I know that are going to make them feel like I care about them. And so that opens that door to begin to address the problem because now I have tapped into something. I've come to where they are, tapped into something that's interesting to them, and it allows them to open up. So I think when you give, even walking in the mornings, there would be times walking through the neighborhoods, there would be a group of kids waiting for the bus. And I would make sure when I passed by them, I would say, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, have a great day. I didn't know who those children were, but I also know that I don't know what they walk out of that house from that morning. And hopefully that good morning, have a great day made a difference in some part of their day, even if it was a short difference, it made a difference. So I agree with you. And I think in our discussion, we're not trying to put the blame or point the finger, but what we are trying to say is this needs to be a collective effort. It can't be, we can't just throw the ball one way and say, well, that's where the ball is, that's where it needs to happen. Because sometimes you throw the ball that way, there's nobody there to catch it. And so now you got to say, okay, maybe I have to fill in that gap. Maybe I have to offer a compliment. Maybe I have to see that child who has a sad face and I have to step in and say, is everything okay? Are you being bullied? Is something happening at home? I'm a safe place, or I can help you get to a safe place. So it's how do we get to that collective effort of making school as enjoyable or tolerable as possible for as many children as possible. And so I appreciate everything that you ladies have spoke to tonight about, our topics of bullying, mental readiness, and self-confidence. The last thing I want to talk about that I really want to highlight is the conflict resolution. What's happening in school? I know that we talk about the mediation center. Tell me about what's happening. What can parents and students and teachers know about what we have in our public school systems that help with conflict resolution?
Well, we do have peer mediation in Savannah Chatham County Public Schools. And not only are we teaching conflict resolution skills, but we're also giving them leadership skills. And so they're getting skills that they can use throughout their life, not just in elementary or middle or high school. They can use them in their personal lives as well. So we do have peer mediation in the schools. The counselors, professional counselors are there, and they are on top of dealing with whatever issues students bring to them. And sometimes they mediate themselves, especially those really hardcore situations. So we have adults that are able to mediate those situations that are really hardcore. And I know in the elementary schools, they used to have this, I'm talking about when I was back in school 30 years ago, they had classroom guidance. And so the professional counselors would go by different classrooms, and they always had a topic that they would bring up and they would talk about. And resolving conflict was one of those topics. How do you resolve conflict? How do you deal with the situation where someone took something from you? Do you just go and fight, or do you try to talk to them and try to get it back? So the schools have lots of programs, lots of individuals there who can help with resolving conflict. And parents should know that. Some schools even have on their websites that they have a peer mediation program. Some of those schools that I work very, very closely with, they have put that on their websites that we have peer mediation, as well as the referral form, so that anybody, even a parent, if they needed to their child to deal with a conflict and the child wasn't telling the teacher or the coordinator, the parent could do that form themselves for their child to participate in conflict resolution and mediation.
I think that, and I was going to ask that question, how could parents access that? So there's a form on the website.
On some websites, not all schools have done that.
Some websites,
yes.
Well, hopefully, all schools will get on board and begin to implement that and make that provision available, because conflict resolution, although it's the last thing I mentioned, it really is the top of the pier to help resolve some of the other things that happen with students. And even with conflict, I think with conflict resolution, it's also important to teach internal conflict resolution.
Yes.
Sometimes internal conflict is what bleeds out and causes the external conflict.
Exactly. Yeah. And we talk about that too in our peer mediation trainings. But one of the things that I wanted to say for parents, particularly, I've had some parents who, when they get that peer mediation packet, they're kind of leery of their child becoming a mediator because they think that the disputants might retaliate against their child for mediating that situation. But I have to let them know that the situations that our mediators mediate are not those hardcore situations. And plus, we teach them the skills to de-escalate. And they also know that if the situation gets too tough for them, they can always call off the mediation. And there's always an adult nearby. So they're not just in a situation by themselves, the two of them, where they are mediating. And then something gets out of hand. It doesn't happen that way. So I just want parents to be aware of that.
Yes, to piggyback off of what Dr. Thompson said, we do it in our school. And we're always nearby, the peer mediators. And of course, they're not mediating fights, something that's really an administrative stuff. It's those little, minor things that we know that if they talked about it, then they can come to some kind of agreement, but not those big major things. That's left for administration. So there's no need to fear the peer mediation. It works well. And a lot of the students are very thankful. They enjoy talking with the other students and getting their perspective on some things. So it has worked well when we've done it.
Oh, wonderful. I'm a firm believer in if they learn to mediate the minor things, it'll build the skills for mediating the larger things. So start somewhere. Dr. Jefferson, I'm going to say it. Is it already at your school as well, or?
I haven't been at a school that offered it. I've heard about it, and I think from what I've heard, I think it's a wonderful thing. But what I did at my previous school was I did conflict resolution, and I brought in a peer so they can assist me with what their suggestions are for, resolving the situations, because I believe kids will open up more to their peers than the adults. So
Well, Ms. Jefferson, we would love to come to Groves. We've been there a long time ago, and it's about time for us to get back in there. So I'm going to shoot you an email tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. But know this, I will definitely work with my colleagues and get you back in once we get our feet settled in the sand, beginning of the year. But I love conflict resolutions, because I love when that light bulb goes off, when they realize, was that really a good decision to do what I did? And then they start talking out, because I said, okay, tell your side, you tell your side, and just think about how we could have done it better. How we could, and then sometimes the light bulb goes off, and I'm like, yeah, Ms. Jefferson, you know, and I said, I didn't say anything. I wanted you guys to figure this out. So I love when they resolve it, just talking about it. And I'm just sitting there like, go ahead, I'm listening. And then they come to realize, you know what? And then another thing that I even coming out of conflict resolution, they come out and they solve that situation they have, and they realize they're not meant to be together. And that's okay too. You don't have to be friends with everyone. You don't have to like everyone. You just got to be respectful to those. And that's what I like. I mean, that's another part of it, because everybody thinks that when you resolve the conflict, you got to be friends. No, not really. You just got to learn to see that everybody does things differently, and you have to respect that. And we can just agree to disagree and not be friends. And that is okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that conflict resolution and learning that skill also is a skill that builds self-confidence, that self-esteem. Ladies, thank you so much for having this discussion tonight about what we can do to help our children have a more productive, more tolerable school year. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. We thank all of you for joining us. Listen, if you have a topic that you want these ladies to talk about, I will definitely try and bring them back. But if there's something you want them to address about school and children, any issue that deals with your child in school that you may need help with, some type of intervention, shoot an email to info@mcdanielscounseling.org or respond to us in Dr. Ann Cares on Facebook, and we will absolutely get your question answered. Bring another panel where they can answer that question. Just reach out. We're here to help you. We're not putting the ball in your court, but we're saying we want you to be a part of the team. We want parents to be a part. We want children to be a part. We want our school counselors and social workers and therapists. We want everybody to be a part of the team so that we can build better communities. I think when we build better people, we create better communities. When we create better communities, we have more positive outcomes. You had something to say, Dr. Thompson?
Yes. The Mediation Center is sponsoring a Peace in the Park, October the 1st. We had our first annual one last year. It's where everybody in the community comes together and we have a big peace rally. It's going to be at Daffin Park, October the 1st, beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully we'll see you all there. If you like vendor space, just contact the Mediation Center.
What's the number for the Mediation Center?
You can reach me at 912-999-2110.
One more time.
999-2110.
All right.
Area code 912.
All right. So let's come to Peace in the Park. We're talking about conflict resolution and learning skills, great skills that can help all of us in our community and help us have a better community, make good decisions and have positive outcomes. Thank you so much for joining. Enjoy the remainder of your night. Have a great week, and we will see you next month with another awesome topic on the Ready, Set, Talk show. Thank you. I'm Dr. McDaniel, your host, and I appreciate you joining us. Be blessed.
Real issues affecting real people in real life. Ready, Set, Talk. Real issues affecting real people in real life. Ready, Set, Talk. Come on and talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. Let's all talk about it. 'Cause we're real people in real life. Ready, Set, Talk.